Welcome back. We have Sergeant Tim Watson with us again, our recent co-host. And so we spent the last couple episodes talking about recruitment, retention, technology, generations, and some work-life balance and all of that. But I want to shift gears completely 100% because back when you were first on the show, we did 2 episodes. One of them was similar topics to that, and one of them was on what is your day job. And your day job is you head a team of crisis responders and other people in the realm of community outreach. And a part of your daily task or your daily mission, your function as a police unit, is the city's tool to address issues related to homelessness. And so not as a service organization or anything like that, but as a tool for connecting people to resources, to addressing the day-to-day issues that are kind of front and center, like illegal camping, like debris and trash and things like that, like trespassing, like managing the balance of usage of the park and that facility or those facilities for everyone, to being a liaison to businesses as kind of a conduit where they can express frustration with an issue they're facing, whatever. And you can elaborate on any number of these things. But when we last talked, we talked about our success, because we are not alone in our community in having an issue with an influx or a large number of homeless living in our parks, living on our streets, living in large encampments. But what it does sort of make us unique is the way we've addressed it, and how I would declare that we have had a certain amount of success. When you look relative to where we were 4 years ago, which was, the numbers would be complicated a little bit because of COVID and some of that. But when you look at the success we have had, and you define what I mean by success, you can't help but think that we, our agency, have done some things right to balance the rights of the individuals with the community at large and navigate this super sensitive political topic. And so this episode, I thought we would do an update on, like, see where the conversation takes us on your day-to-day activities. So,
yeah, so here we are. Demonstrably we have had success. When I say we, you mentioned our agency and our response, but truly it is a citywide approach, as in all departments are involved in the response. So collaboration has been key. If there was one thing that was or has been and continues to be the best strategy, is collaboration amongst all the various entities within our municipality and also external stakeholders, the other social service providers that are in our area. So my team has a heart for the collaboration and working together. And I've worked in various teams in the past. Maybe you have too, where you have personalities that they want to be, I call them kingdom builders. They want to build a wall around what they have, and this is what I'm going to do, and all the successes will be ours or / mine to be had. And there's little desire to work with or even incorporate others into the process. Sometimes it's a product of someone who's not able to delegate, but more I've seen just more of a personality of there's a task to be done and I'm going to do it, and it's just like it'll be an accomplishment. Not necessarily like a narcissistic view of like it has to be me that has my name in lights, but a task was given to me and I'm the one that must do it. So collaboration absolutely has been key across the board. Every department within our city has been very receptive to either seeking help and or helping out with whatever the problem would be, from our parks department, our public works department, traffic, parks and recreation. They were instrumental in helping writing some new rules and laws that had just, since time had gone by and society had changed, were need to be implemented to make a safer space to ensure the quality of life to be had. Then our social service agencies that we work with, that they seem to had been a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of people that were seeking services, and the lack of coordination amongst the different service providers, where people would go to multiple service providers and have, maybe 3 people working on one problem, whereas our group focuses on finding out what the individual that is in need has been doing and where they've been seeking their help, and try to streamline that and help coordinate some of those other entities. And my folks, my crisis responders and community outreach coordinator, they just are super good at being creative in a way that they are presented with a hurdle, and instead of stopping and staring at the wall that's in front of them, you find a creative way to go over the wall or through the wall or under the wall or around it. Let there be no barriers until you actually have to stop from getting a person what it is that they need to be successful for their next step.
Let me stop for a second, and because we have to define the problem, because it's going to vary by community, because some communities, by community, I mean the majority of people or the culture in the community, whatever. Our community does not like, is not in favor of homeless camps in our parks, trash in the streets. And these are huge generalizations. Basically, the visual plight of homelessness. And so we live in one of those communities where the outcry, the loud majority of people are saying what I would classify as unhelpful things, like haul them to jail, offer them services. If they refuse, take them to jail, bus them out of town, saying things like they're all mentally ill, they're all on drugs. They're making things that they're making statements that they're not helpful. And so, and even if there's an air of truth to any number of those statements, those sorts of statements aren't helpful. They're not lawful. And it's not, when I say it's not lawful, it's like this is a population of people who still has rights. And so we, as the police, find ourselves in a position to navigate the community's expectations, the community at large, their expectations to have equal access to the parks and keeping our city clean and making it a place that we're proud of and all that, while also serving this population who for whatever reason has ended up on the streets in different communities. And we, as we talked about earlier, months ago in the episode, saw a huge spike. And so we went from it being kind of uncommon, or we had about a dozen or whatever, and you knew all their names, to having hundreds. And other cities have faced that as well. And so when we say the problem is our community expects the parks to be free of that so that they could use them for park stuff. And that's just one example. Businesses expect that they can come to work in the morning and there won't be homeless people living in the vestibules of their business. That there won't be, people are gone, but trash and bodily waste is in their doorways and things like that. Our community expects that to not exist, or at least that we will address it. Yeah. And so your unit is unique because it is comprised of not cops. You are a unit within the police agency who is built out of civilian employees, and you kind of have a split mission that overlaps. And so your primary function when the team was created was to respond to crisis. So crisis responders make up most of your team. And so that when that unit was built 4 or 5 years ago, their job was to respond along with the police to incidents of crisis. What we found, and not that we were super surprised, is that there's a ton of overlap between the people who are in crisis and the homeless community, right? Your team also responds to homes and not homeless people and a wide variety of other places. but you spend a lot of time on the street with the homeless people. And so when we say problem, you're solving problems by connecting. The formula that has been kind of vetted out is you recognize that if you can guide someone through the services and not just say they're that way, then we've had success removing people from a situation of homelessness to prosperity, even in some cases. But at a minimum, we've removed them from whatever hardship that they were in that had them on the street to off the street. And that's one at a time what your team is good at walking people through.
My team has crisis responders and also a community outreach coordinator. Community outreach coordinator primary job is to address the homelessness issues, which does cause that overlap with our crisis responders because the people that are homeless oftentimes are drug or mental health afflicted and need it, hence crisis, and need that intervention. Yeah, the crisis responders are responding to calls for service as well regarding a myriad of things that deal with mental health type issues or substance abuse. Going back, like the argument I think is like, well, this isn't a police issue necessarily. Of the things that I was talking to address, of like how getting people from drug addiction to sobriety or homelessness to having a home is, you're right, but our public is calling the government for help, and that government hotline that they call happens to be the police department. And we found ourselves before the creation of the behavioral health unit that these calls are coming in for service and we're just sending cops out to it. And again, like a lot of it, the root is not a police problem. It's a society problem. It's a family's problem. It's
a part of why it became a police problem is it manifests visually in the public as a police problem because it manifests as disorderly conduct. It manifests as trespassing.
Yeah, those are the symptoms.
Yeah, right. So it became a police problem because we were responding to these isolated incidents of someone malfunctioning in the street, or someone trespassing on private property, or any number of other things. And so we're always we being the police are always the ones, the function of the government that is going to go when you call because we're out on the street. And so that's why we've been the default social workers for 100 years.
Yeah, exactly. So, that brings us to where we are now is I guess we had a choice. We could have just years ago decided we're just going to be cops, and either we're going to stop responding to those societal issues that, well, it's not a crime. Nothing you're telling me is reported as a crime. We're not going to go. Or we keep sending the cops to do the social work type job. So why not embrace it and have some say in the direction that it goes? And what I would argue has become a more efficient manner. It is a way more efficient use of your government dollars to have the crisis responders alongside with the law enforcement and also the community outreach coordinator who within their job functions are afforded the opportunity to do those collaborations that I talked about with the other people to get things done. So it's not a cop who is having to clean up a mess that we don't know who left it behind, but it's on this public right of way. Well, we have someone who can call up either the waste management company and or the public works department with a loader to remove it immediately so it doesn't lead to further blight and other quality of life issues that are happening. Back at the beginning of this uptick where we saw hundreds of people that were occupying public spaces, causing it to be filled with waste, human waste, garbage, and rodents. Like it was just unhealthy. And these were our beautiful parks and our public spaces, making it not accessible or safe for everybody in the community. So that was kind of been the charge. I've been doing this position now for a little over 1 year now. A year ago, snapshot compared to now is vastly different. The problems that we were experiencing were 20 plus people still causing damage and harm and unsanitary spots within public spaces. And that has been turned 180, where it is rare to find those same spaces occupied. And that has been through the efforts not only of just our unit, but also those of the other social service agencies.
If you'd asked us a year ago when you went into that unit, we would have said we are having success, because there had already been a year ago. We were like, we're on the right track. We're doing, and so you were the logic. Adding you to that unit, who before was a strictly civilian unit within the police department, adding a police sergeant to the unit added some management and oversight, which wasn't terribly necessary, but it did add a commissioned law enforcement officer to collaborate daily rather than whatever cop they could find on the street, and then the vision of a leader to kind of guide the team where it needed to go next. And so,
it hit, I would say, a plateau.
Yeah.
Like most things, you get to a plateau and you need that next push to get to that next level.
So I understand what you're saying. And I think that it would be helpful if you told like a specific story, because I know the success you're having because I've witnessed it. But specifically, can you describe a problem, let's call it, and a way that you or your team addressed it, navigated it, and solved the problem? Earlier off camera, you told a couple stories that would illustrate it perfectly if those are good ones, but you might have a different one.
Yeah. So we're playing a long game. So though we're getting some quick results, which is what we had talked about, and I'll bring that up here, but I just want to make sure that the listener understands that relationships being built are key to the success long term, and we have to play a long game. So relationships have been being built with people that are frequently in our sites for utilizing police services or mental health services. So I'll start with that. Recently, within the last week or so, we had a woman who has been on the streets for years, was a functional member of society in a nursing profession at one point in her life, has a pension to fall back on, not a millionaire by any chance, but has an income, but due to mental health illness and substance abuse is on the street, and has good moments and bad moments of their life, as we all do. And those good moments and bad moments don't look like good being like, we're going to Disneyland. Good is less screaming for today, and bad is constant screaming and profanities and inappropriate gestures out on the busiest streets of our town, and trying to verbally pick fights with people, or using such language that would tend to cause concern. So recently, and this is kind of cyclical behavior for the person that we've been aware of, and we've been making relationship. It is a person that us and through other social agencies have tried, quote, everything. Like we tried to get the person, walk them up to housing, walk them up to ways to get a path to better their situation. Recently, like I said, this last week, there was definitely a decline happening in the behavior, as in an amplification of the screaming and the hostility that was coming up. And me and the team, we discussed like we're going to need to have an intervention of some sorts occur here, because this person is bordering criminal activity. Those I've described probably could be described as criminal activity. Probably described a little bit more severe than what it actually was, but it definitely was trending towards criminal activity. And ideally, we don't want to try to arrest our way out of the situation, but for when it's necessary, and especially if somebody has mental health issues, that's not necessarily the best path. The best path would be wellness. So we discuss what to do. And one of my crisis responders, I said, hey, we need to look at this person and kind of make it a priority this week to see what we can do. See what we can do to get them back regulated. And crisis responder was like, well, I just want to, you're here. I want to hear you clearly that you're saying that we need to get this person and find things for them to do. Like, no, bigger strategy. We need to find something that will work. And because her response was like, well, we've tried these things. And matter of fact, the crisis responder last time I talked to her, used this profanity laced to, in no way ever talk to me again type thing. And there just came a moment where the person was right by us, and crisis responder, and in our always do, never give up, no, there's no wall big enough, went, I'm just going to go talk to the person.
This is a person you classify like, we've tried everything. Like a street cop would go, that's a lost cause. Like, you guys are wasting your breath. Or you've tried everything, and why, more effort is not going to solve this problem.
That's the accurate
like a lost cause.
Yeah, lost cause. That society the average person in society would write this person off and say, don't bother again.
And you recognizing there's an escalation in this cyclical behavior, you told your staff, like, this week, focus on this person. Let's make a priority out of it.
Right.
Our efforts, and see what we can make happen.
Exactly. Yeah, precisely. And so fast forwarding, my crisis responder has an opportunity to make contact, just kind of naturally, not confrontational. There was another group of people around, and just kind of quietly worked into an approach. And this gal, some reason, decided to just embrace the crisis responder, gave them a hug, which was far cry from what had happened the last time. And they engaged in a dialogue that led to 2-3 hours later, I get a picture on my cell phone, my work cell phone, and it's a picture of this gal with a key to her new apartment that they had managed to procure somehow.
And so what in the world happened because when you and your team first encountered her in the wild that day, if I recall, she was like actively disorderly. She was being vulgar towards you and the staff and acting nuts. And somehow you got from there to checked into an apartment, or is that what you said? An apartment?
Yeah, an apartment. Yeah. That's the magic of it all. Yeah. So, the beauty of having that relationship before, the person knew that we, being us and our team, are always ready and available for them and their change. There's never a time that we go, you've told me to buzz off, and that's going to be buzzing off forever.
And when you say the long game earlier, what you meant was despite you've had lots of interactions with this person, and you've been building a relationship, and you just never know when it's going to pay off. But you knew her background, you knew her barriers, she knew you guys, and the hope is then that one day it just clicks and the magic happens, and it's based on this capital you've built. And that's what happened?
Yeah, that's what happens daily. So what had happened was they got a hold of her and worked on some stabilization to get her de-escalated. And somebody had heard that there was an apartment that was opening up, and that she would probably qualify given the income that she has. And we have direct phone lines to people that are apartment managers, and a couple phone calls were made, and a door happened to be open just at the right place at the right time. A lot of it is luck, but you don't get to capitalize on luck without preparation.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a good example of how in a silo of a mental health team and a cop team and a community outreach team, in each of those silos, you couldn't have had that same success as you dealt with criminal issues, you dealt with homeless community outreach issues, and you dealt with mental health issues. And as a collaborative team, multidisciplinary team, you had all the tools at your disposal to walk with her through the long game.
Mm-hmm.
And one day there's a little bit of free will and willingness that has to come along with it. One day she was ready for the help that you offered.
Right. And we're fully prepared for that next day when, down the road and they may get exited from their housing. Mm-hmm. And our determination will be to be there to help out again, to get them back on the track, to not slip into criminal behavior is the hope.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because we talked last time a bunch about our strategy of educating and offering servicing and encouraging. And ultimately, we're still taking a strict enforcement when it's necessary. Like
absolutely.
For our camping ordinances and things like that, trespassing.
You take a shopping cart off of the property and you convert it to your own use, you're going to see the judge. Yeah.
Open drug use, things like that. We do have this compassionate wing, but we also, with the help of the patrol officers who aid your team, have nearly zero tolerance for especially repeat offenders who are just criminals on the street. So,
I mentioned before that I was one of the top 2 arrest makers, I guess, citing criminal citations in our department. Mm-hmm. So I lead the compassion wing, but I also lead the enforcement wing as well. And even the people that I end up arresting regularly are still realize that I hope for their betterment. Mm-hmm. I've regularly have people that they get back out of jail and will apologize to me for their behavior and what they made me have to do, as in taking them to jail. That again just is a way to show that is the drive of our unit, from me through the rest of them and them to me, of there's always hope.
You may or may not be able to add to the story. So I'll tell you a story and then you'll either add to it or you won't. There is a fella who's been on the streets of our town for decades. He's a household name amongst police officers. Regular interactions, community members who live or work in the downtown area would definitely recognize him. He's very regularly aggressive and disorderly. He can be very mean. And so we've had hundreds of dealings with him as police. You might say a lost cause. That if you were to suggest that the behavioral health unit or your team could affect some change of behavior short of imprisonment or long-term commitment, there's just lost cause.
Yes.
Could be a general sentiment among the line level officer. The other day, so your team works out of a station across town. And so I stop in as often as possible. You weren't there, and I walked into your team's office, and they said, "Did you hear that one of your crisis responders,
DB,
can give him a call?" And I said, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, he's currently getting treatment, and if she calls, he'll take the call." And I'm like, "No."
Have you ever had a conversation with the person, with DB? A real articulate
one? No.
Multiple sentences? No. I'd never have.
No.
In my entire career.
No.
I don't think I've ever had full, a paragraph of a conversation with a person.
Just cursing and literal fighting.
Feral.
Yeah. And so I'm like, no way. And so, because they know I have a history with this guy for some reason, just through my police interactions with him as a cop, he picks up on my last name, and he's got a mind, a memory, like a steel trap. Mm-hmm. And so he remembers everything. And so he amps up just at the mere sight of me. And so, for example, side tangent, put a pin in that. One day, one of our now sergeants, then police officers, and I were on swing shift. He rolls up on this fella being disorderly in an alley, one block over from the police department, and he's drinking wine from one of those big glass jugs. And so the officer tries to address the disorderly conduct and the drinking from the jug, and he gives a bunch of pushback, and the officer's like, "Fine, I guess I have to write you a ticket because you're not getting it." So the officer goes back, handwritten ticket. He's writing a ticket. About the time I roll up to cover, he's writing this ticket, and I walk up and I'm like, "Oh no!" Because I have a history with this guy where he just sees me and he freaks out. And so I walk up to the window, and I'm just the cover officer. I'm not going to say anything. And I'm just standing there smiling my best just to not make this thing, not to get him amped up. And he's just standing there stewing, just, 15 feet in front of the cop car. And the officer's scribbling his ticket in the driver's seat. And I noticed that this guy has a guitar. You know the story? Mm-hmm. And I've never seen him with a guitar ever. He never has anything. And so, some people, they just have shopping carts full of stuff. This guy has nothing almost ever. And so here he's got this guitar and maybe a jug of wine. And so, and it's a nice guitar. This thing has not been outside long. And so I'm like, So I say, "Hey, cool guitar." That's it. I'm rapport building. Cool guitar. And I may have said something like, "I didn't realize you played guitar," or something like that. But it was succinct and it was kind. At least it was intended to be kind, not sarcastic at all. And the tone wasn't. He doesn't say anything. He scowls at me. He had been squatting like in a catcher squat. He stands up. He grabs the guitar by the neck, holds it over his head like an axe, and he bashes it into splinters on the ground. And I'm just like, "What?" Because I said, "Cool guitar." And so the other officer gets out with the ticket, and he's like, "Clean this mess up." Hands him his ticket, and we leave. So it was a cite and release for, the jug of wine or whatever. So that's this guy to me. And so they know I have that background and a couple of other scuffs. And so they say, "Yeah, watch." They tell me this story. So your employee goes, "Beep, boop, boop." And it rang to a community phone where he's getting treatment. And she says, "Is he there?" And they're like, "Well, yeah." And it's 9 a.m. So it's not really early, but the guy answers all groggy. Because I imagine it just rings to a desk phone in a common area. And so this guy comes to the phone, and I recognize his voice immediately. And he's like, "Hello." And she says, "Hey, how are you? It's me." And he's like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And she's like, and she had a legit reason to call. She said, "Hey, I've been working with this thing, and when you get out, wanting to connect you to this, serve." I don't remember. I actually don't remember what she was connecting him to. But when you get out, I have this plan for you to remain stable and get the medication you need through this outlet and be housed here temporarily until you can. And she's just like, and she goes through this kind of complex plan, and he goes. And he repeats parts of it back to her, and he's like, but ultimately his question is, she says, "Would you be interested in that?" And he goes, "If I said yes, can I get out of here?" And she's like, "Well, no, you gotta, what you're doing now is court ordered, so I can't speed that up, but I want to use this as an opportunity to as a jump off point for future success. And so I can't help what you're doing now, but when you're done there and you get back, if we can get you engaged with this stuff, maybe this doesn't have to happen again." And he's like, "Oh, okay, I guess that's," and he's having a conversation, and my mind was blown. And I actually left during the conversation, but it sounds like that story.
Yeah, I heard. Well, I've been watching that evolution happening with over several phone calls that have been made, and being just amazed because like I said before, I don't think I ever had pieced together enough sentences to actually be a paragraph that you could type "Hey, this guy and I had this conversation." It was just disjointed and hostile.
Talk about long game. Isn't he the one that they were doing a transport for him. He got his hands on her phone and did something inappropriate with it.
Yes.
I can't remember what he did.
He
with her work phone.
Because
they have a car, like not a cop car.
Police porn, I think, is what she got to her phone, and the last search was police porn, I think.
Because they were taking him somewhere in the car, and he had her phone maybe to use it or something, and
he also bit it and broke her screen.
Yeah. And searched porn on her work phone. And so this is the guy we're dealing with. He actually, one time I was arresting him, he had wandered into the back of a notorious bar that had always had fights, and he caused a huge fight. And when I got there, I'm taking him into custody. And as I'm trying to get him into handcuffs, I've got him against my car, and the cars have a wrap. The black, the white part is a wrap.
Vinyl wrap on it.
Yeah. And so as I'm trying to cuff him, he is chewing the wrap off of the cop car. So, but your crew is having some success. That's the point of the story.
Yeah. And so, his treatment is, as you mentioned, is court ordered. That the success is there, but it's been the ongoing relationship, and hopefully that does pay off in the future when he is finally released from whatever facility he's at. That we can maybe continue this path of success, because our community needs him to be on track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and those are like really good examples, but. And you mentioned like you're fully prepared for like the setback, like the lady you mentioned earlier with the keys to the apartment. Like you're fully prepared. You're not naive that tomorrow you might just run into her in an alley somewhere,
right? And
go, but like that's the long game, and it only has to stick once. And so long as you remain engaged, the police calls for service decrease, the likelihood of a community encounter decreases. And
it's an investment into future de-escalation. Mm-hmm. It is much easier to regulate someone, de-escalate them when you already have a relationship.
Yeah. So holistically, you say that you can't. The community can't say like the ones that just load them in a bus and haul them out of town, or just haul them all to jail if they don't want help or whatever. Like that doesn't work. What also doesn't work is to say, solve homelessness, solve mental health, solve substance use. That doesn't work, because that's a long-term thing. That is a complex problem that just isn't that simple. What we can do is get small victories that contribute to the overall strategic victory, right? And so that's the success. Is don't try and bite off too much. Have these long game mentalities that build relationships. Your crew is good at connecting. They just know everyone in the community, meaning like you say, like, oh, Joe needs a suitcase and some work and a suit for a job interview. And you're just like, oh, I know a guy for that. Or
that is one phone call away.
Yeah. Right.
Literally.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Or they just need a place to stay tonight, so that they can get to the doctor's appointment in the morning, because that's the barrier. Is if we lose them tonight to the street, they won't get to this appointment, and now we're derailed again. And you're like, oh, I got a guy for that. Yep. And so those are the little victories. You can't just fix it overnight.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. So when this unit first started, we were in there was some grant funding involved, and we were in some collaborative meetings with other agencies, and they were asking like to share some of the success, and it was really early on that I realized this, and this wasn't my success. I was witnessing it. It was the model of sitting in a room like this and trying to solve the problem, which is what others were doing, wasn't working. And what was working was boots on the ground in the trenches. Like, you can't solve this problem from inside the walls. And we've talked about this before. You can't just put a sign out front that said, come on in, we'll help you. Like, you got to meet them to use the term your team uses, where they are. And so we really early on, just maybe call it luck, we put literal boots on their feet and said, go out on the streets, meet them where they are, and start solving problems. Empowered them to solve problems. Another thing that they weren't used to coming from a clinical environment was kind of the decentralized command that police officers use, which is, we need you to feel empowered to make these decisions and solve these problems within law, policy, and ethics. And man, once they warmed up to that.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to take over the unit when they were fully on board with that, and take it that, next steps of, they have personal ownership of the problem that is presented to them. So, and carrying it out as far as you can go, without having to check and see if it was okay from the boss, or the bosses from their other employers. They would have 3, 4, 5 bosses, and pull different directions. Now we went, you're going to have your chain of command. It's going to be your sergeant. It's going to be the captain. It's going to be the chief, and the chief, his direction, his commander's intent is that we're going to do this, and the captain is saying what the chief is saying, and the sergeant is saying what the chief is saying, and we're just going to get it done within these parameters: illegal, moral, ethical, and the right thing to do. Be creative and go for it. Run things past your boss, to problem solve and solve the problem. It's so much freedom, and I got a good group, the crisis responders and the outreach coordinator, that they come up with things that I would have never have thought of, that are great at solving problems, and they're able to see second and third order effects that will happen down the road. I may ask for a bit of information, and they have, I know you're asking because of this, this, and this. You're going to need this piece of information, which sometimes I try to pretend I knew that's what I was going to need, but they're already, through 2-3 steps ahead of me on that. So yeah, just very blessed to have the good set of personnel that have tremendous skills and abilities.
So then, to end, I wouldn't say we're at a plateau at all, where we were a year ago. Like, I still see that we're on an upward trajectory of success. And so I guess then I would ask, what's next? What now? What's from here? What is the future improvements? How do we continue to grow? What does that look like?
That is precisely the question I've been posing to the group with this, as we got to my 1-year anniversary. Pose, like, what does the next year look like? Because we've had some tremendous success, but before we were casting net and catching fish, and now it's got to be directed spear fishing, anticipating problems and still responding to the community problems. The number of people with problems that are coming across our radar are smaller, but their problem is, or they're resistant to change, is more acute. So the next step is start isolating what specific needs are to encourage change. We mentioned that we educate, we encourage, and we enforce. And the people of all educated, they are aware of what the law is. They are aware of where the resources are, and they've been encouraged to comply with the law or seek that help. And we still are where we are with a handful of people. So on a side of our regular response to calls, it will be staffing and finding individualized plans for individual people that we can best serve.
And just to better define, they're resistant to help, but the problem, to define the problem, is that they are high utilizers of emergency responders,
high call
the
volume.
hospital. They are a high user of the police and or EMS. And so which means they continue to break the law and cause problems.
Yeah, nuisance.
So the problem is not that they are homeless.
Right.
The problem is that they are resistant to help and that they continue to break the law and live on the street. And despite being arrested and directed to resources and everything that we've tried that has worked in others, we're not having success with these that are more resistant.
That's the best way to put
But the group is much smaller.
Yes. Yeah. We're down to but a handful. I bet 10 or less at this point.
Yeah, of our high utilizers. Yeah.
Yes.
And then occasionally you go, hey, there's some folks rolled into town, just like anywhere else, because we're a stop off the freeway like anywhere else.
Yeah, to be clear, not every person who is experiencing homelessness is causing police calls for service, or EMS necessarily. There's tons of people that are just, in a bad situation, and they're navigating things on their own, which is, I commend, because that is a hard thing to navigate. I went through a poverty simulation where they assigned you a task and they give you a profile. They assign you a profile and then give you tasks that you have to accomplish as a family or as a single person. And what I found is all the tasks that they gave were very real and very impossible to accomplish in the time frame that they gave. And it definitely was affirming and eye-opening to me to see people that are struggling about how so many systems are not built. They are there to help, but not necessarily built and function in a way that does help. But that's a topic for another day.
Well, that's a good update. I guess then I wonder if in the future any of your crew might want to come on and tell a tale or so. I know they tend to be really careful because they come from a land of medical privacy and things like that, and so probably not. But they are interesting. It's interesting to work with a group like that when we've worked with cops for so long.
Yeah,
to introduce mental health workers into our building and to our culture. It's they're different than us.
True.
Well, on that, I guess then. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.